Good afternoon, everyone. I have a pleasure and honor to moderate this panel. Many thanks to our previous speakers. And this panel obviously is about the priorities of the Hungarian presidency and about recommendations from experts from the TEPSA network. Also, on my part, I would like to warmly welcome Mr. Balázs Molnár, State Secretary responsible for the Council presidency. Our panel will take place in a hybrid format. We will therefore hear Professor Nicoletta Pirozzi and Professor Richard Youngs online. Nicoletta is heading the EU program at the Istituto Affari Internazionali in Rome, and Richard is a senior fellow at Carnegie Europe. Both are members of the TEPSA board, and they have coordinated the TEPSA recommendations. We have selected 3 topics for recommendations reflecting key areas of interest of the Hungarian presidency. And these 3 are the role of performance-based financing in the design of the next MFF, the future of cohesion policy, and implementation of the recently agreed pact on migration and asylum, with emphasis on partnerships with third countries. In the introduction of our recommendations, we reflect on the timing of the Hungarian presidency in Europe at the time of obviously institutional reforms and an alarming security situation in Europe. So we make this point about the special responsibility of the presidency to facilitate compromise solutions that strengthen the Union. We will hear more from Nicoletta and Richard, but now I'd like to give the floor to Mr. State Secretary for his outline of the presidency priorities. Thank you.
It's my pleasure to be here. Can you hear me all right? Like this? Better?
Yeah.
Very good. All right, I will try not to concentrate on this in the middle of my face. So it is my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. Of course, it is our pleasure to have such gatherings in Budapest, and thank you for the organizers as well, and thank you for all the guests who are here and you have interest in what is happening with the presidency and what actually is to be awaited from Hungary. We will of course try to live up to the expectations from the first presidency, which was 13.5 years ago. We had that time, of course, the first presidency, which is always very special, and whereby our Belgian friends just finished their 13th. We are only looking into the second one, but this is very much different from the first one. If I may start with that. What is different? First and foremost, it's the institutional transition. We already had the elections in most of the countries, like here, we had it on Sunday. We roughly know the new EP's setup. Of course, we don't necessarily know yet the fractions, but we will have answers in that regard as well. And we will continue on Monday evening. Leaders will meet and have the first discussion on the new top jobs. And this will continue with, of course, the new president of the Commission, the commissioners, the new president of the European Council, and of course the new Borrell, so to say. So we will have to look into the new setup, which results in some interesting phenomena for the Hungarian presidency. Mostly, we will not be able to take up trialogues with the parliament, most probably until mid-October, maybe November. The elections were 2 weeks later than last time, 5 years ago, and that time we had the up and running new commission on the 1st of December. So we will see how that will end up, but logically 1st of December is doable. There are some pessimistic scenario that we will not have a new commission in this year, but I believe that actually 1st of December is something which is possible. On the other hand, of course, we have a lot of issues on the table, nevertheless not having trialogues for the first couple of months. We just had a discussion with the Council General Secretariat, and we have 122 legislative files open. So it's enough on the table on the Council side as well. And of course, we will try to move forward as much as only possible. One of the requirements towards a presidency is to be an honest broker. Be an honest broker means that you are representing the EU 27. and you are representing the Council when it comes to discussions and negotiations with the other institutions. So that is something which Hungary is committed to be, known as broker presidency, and we have identified issues which we believe are of importance to the European population, and I will list these 7 priority nodes in a minute. But I would like to start with drawing up the big picture, that what is happening around Europe and what is very much influencing the presidency, any presidency actually, but as we are, thanks to our British friends, this presidency, we will have to deal with these in the next 6 months, starting in 2 weeks' time. First is, of course, the war in the imminent neighborhood. The border from here is 250 kilometers. So 250 kilometers from here, there's a country in war. So that also explains a bit our different, or maybe for some interesting take on the war in Ukraine. So neighboring country. On the other hand, we of course have the Middle East crisis. We have the Red Sea crisis, which is partially at least related to the Middle East crisis, but it has some other influences as well. But it certainly has direct effects on European economy. On the other hand, we have all the other crisis situation. And of course, we have to scale up for any given crisis situation, as any presidency has to do that. And of course, we hope that that scale up will not be used. But it does not look like that. During the first presidency, we had to deal with the Arab Spring and the Fukushima nuclear catastrophe. So we hope that we will not have so much and too much on the plate. On the other hand, of course, this is certainly times when we find ourselves in a lot of crisis, and within that, how actually the European Union stance is, how actually Europe looks, and how actually Europe we can see Europe's role in the globalized world, in the global world. It's certainly of very much interest. So we are getting to the 7 priority nodes, and we have one overarching priority, which is indeed a very important one, and which was on the agenda already starting from the Swedish presidency, not that much under the Spanish, and of course during the Belgian as well. I have not mentioned, but we are of course part of the trio with Belgium, Spain, Belgium, Hungary, and we will followed by the next trio with Poland, Denmark, and Cyprus. So we are also, as a last member of this trio, a link to the next trio, as we could hear that there is a link to our Polish friends as well, as actually it's exactly the same as it was in 2011. So first and foremost, overarching priority is the global competitiveness of the European Union. April European Council tasked the next presidencies to deal with this issue, but of course this was very much on the agenda. Europe is lagging behind global competitors when it comes to competitiveness, not just on the east, so not just China, Japan, and the ASEAN countries, but also behind the US, especially in the latest years. And we have to do something with that. There are reports we can rely on. There is the Letta report. There will be a Draghi report published in the middle of July, most probably. And the task of the Hungarian presidency is to keep this question on the agenda. And of course, we would like to go forward with this question very much. So what shall we do? We certainly have to cut red tape. We have to cut the administrative burden on SMEs mostly, but also on other companies. We have to look into the Green Deal. We have to reinvent a bit the green and digital transition. The digital one was a bit lost. It was a bit maybe too green transition. And we have to also look into connectivity. We also have to look into energy prices, energy connectivity as well. So there are a lot of questions on the map. We also have to look into labor market. What can we do for skill shortages? How we can actually advocate for production, more production, technology neutral production, and this industrial policy in the European Union. So these are all issues which we have to address. Our aim is to have some sort of conclusions ready for the informal European Council, which will be held on the 8th of November 2024. We will also deal with the defense and security questions in the European Union. We don't have to talk too much about this. I believe everyone agrees that there is an even greater need for defense capabilities on the European scale as well, irrespective of who will win the next elections in the United States. So this is an issue where we have to scale up production, we have to scale up joint procurements, we have to scale up innovation as well. Financing is a very important question, which was also raised by the Letta report. So financing on both investment, on both the capital markets, but of course also whether it's possible, for example, for the EIB to finance defense-related expenditure. On the other hand, we will deal with the enlargement process. We believe in the merit-based enlargement. Hungary has always been. We have sent ambassadors to every Western Balkans country and Georgia for decades now, who help with them get closer and closer to the European Union. On the Western Balkans, where we have our focus, we certainly have to mention again that this is a question of credibility for the European Union. 21 years ago in Thessaloniki, the European Union promised the European path for the Western Balkans. And of course, it's not just the sole problem and the sole fault of the European Union side that they are not yet members of the European Union and not even very close. But on the other hand, they certainly have to do their homework and they have to fulfill all the merits. But on the other hand, this is very important that this new wind around enlargement somehow has at least a little bit of a breeze on the Western Balkans as well. So we will work for that. Merit-based enlargement policies are very important, and of course we will not neglect the Eastern trio in the process either. On the other hand, we will deal with migration. But as we have said, honest broker presidency, you have to concentrate on issues which unite the European Union, not those which divide. So we have to look into the question from the angle of agreement. And where we have agreement is the external dimension of the migration situation, migration management crisis. This is a very important issue. We have to focus on external border protection. We also have to deal with third countries of key third countries of origin and transit, and we have to go on further with other countries, agreements with other countries, how we can actually work together in order to stop illegal migrations coming towards the European Union. This is a very important issue, as the external border protection and rather the lack of it very much jeopardizes the Schengen system, and with that, of course, the proper functioning of the internal market. We will also deal with the future of the cohesion policy. And sorry, I understand that you have recommendations on both the migration and the next point, which is the cohesion policy. So I'm happy to go into that in the next bit of the program. On the future of cohesion policy, we had the 9th cohesion report published, which states that still now 25% of the European Union's population live in regions which are less developed than 75% of the average of the European Union. These regions happen to be in this neighborhood. So there is still a very important need for the cohesion policies and the cohesion as it is to act further as a tool for closer and closer development levels in the European Union. We believe that cohesion policy is indeed a very important and very successful tool of the European Union. There are member states who are very fairly admitting that how much they benefited year-long and decade-long from cohesion policies, much longer than actually we have even been part of the European Union. Ireland is, for example, one of those countries. So we will certainly like to start with giving food for thought for the next MFF discussions. This will be, of course, dealt with under the next trio. But on the other hand, we all know that the Commission is already working on the next MFF proposal, and we also know that this is not very favorable for the cohesion policy's future. So in that sense, we certainly would like to set the positive examples for how well cohesion works. And if you look around in this country, you can certainly see all the developments which have been done since the 2011 presidency of Hungary, for example, also with the partial or full use of cohesion funds. We will also deal with an issue which was not in the original 7 priorities of Hungary when we started to scale up and when we started to map that what shall we deal with during the presidency. It's the agricultural sector. But if we are honest, there had been a lot of protests, a lot of turmoil around agriculture, and it's not that much the surprise. It's rather the surprise that how come actually it took the sector so long to actually demonstrate loudly. So we will take up this issue. We are convinced that this is a strategic independence question as well. Europe should be able to provide healthy food and foodstuff to the European population. This is, as I have said, an issue of importance, an issue of strategic independence as well, but it's also a question of livelihoods, because the farmers are protesting because their livelihoods is in danger. There are so many regulations, of course, and there are all these market questions for them, how actually they can produce with profit and proper profit their products. And the last one, again, here we will not concentrate on issues where we do not find agreement, but we would like to deal with the demographic situation and demographic challenges of the European Union, because we are convinced that actually there is no member state which is not hit by the demographic crisis. But here again, we will not concentrate on family formation or family law, not just because these fall fully in the member state competencies, but also because we will not be able to find agreement there. But we can speak about many things, certainly about pension sustainability, all the effects of the aging Europe, aging population. We can speak about the sustainability and possibilities of the elderly care, of the social systems, of the healthcare, of the labor market challenges on reconciliation of work and family life, especially for those who raise small children. And we certainly can speak here again about rural neighborhoods and rural regions which lose their young populations in a rapid manner. So these are the 7 issues where we would like to concentrate our thinking. But of course, there will be so many other issues which we will deal with. As an honest broker, as I have said, we will certainly address the Fit for 55 package and the implementation of that. We will speak about the reforms and the future of Europe issues, and we will deal with many other issues on both the foreign and the security agenda. And of course, every council formation has its own priorities. In the morning, I have presented the health priorities, where we certainly have, for example, the pharma package, a very big package, very important package on the table. But of course, you have to signal out some priorities, and these were the 7 which we ended up signaling. The program will be presented next week. As customary, so roughly 2 weeks before commencement of the presidency, as of course, as a courtesy for the Belgian presidency, this is still their time. Of course, we are not yet at the steering wheel, but this comes in a very, very fast manner. So again, thank you very much for coming. We look forward to the cooperation. I'm happy to see all of you here. And of course, I have seen the program, and I'm very happy that there will be discussion on the enlargement, which is a very important issue for us, and I've seen that there are some very good experts, certainly from our side, whom I also know personally. So there will be a very exciting discussion about, for example, the Western Balkans' role. It's very important. They are in a neighboring region as well for us. So I'm very grateful for the good program and of course your presence. I would stop here, and I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. State Secretary, for this very comprehensive overview of the 7 priorities. I'd like to now invite Nicoletta to present TEPSA experts' recommendations to the Hungarian presidency. I hope you can hear as well.
Yes, Mariam, hope you can hear me. I guess so. Okay. So good afternoon. It is a pleasure to join you, unfortunately only online this time. And I thank the State Secretary for giving us this comprehensive first overview of the priorities of the presidency. So I will start by presenting briefly our recommendations that we developed together with Mariam Kotenashvili and Richard Youngs, and also some key experts. I will introduce them later in the TEPSA network. But first of all, let me say that I really value this opportunity to engage in a dialogue with the Hungarian presidency and give the TEPSA network the opportunity to present our concerns on one side and also priorities for the next presidency. So in our recommendations, we start by presenting the Hungary's presidency as a challenging one. Why? Because Hungary is undeniably one member state that has been the most openly confrontational towards many EU policies, positions, and new cooperation proposals. We acknowledge that in the early stages of the presidency, there will be relatively few legislative proposals left on the agenda, and the European Council will have already adopted the strategic agenda 2024-2029. Political negotiations will be ongoing for the next institutions and leadership of the European Union. So in this political situation, we found that the focus should be on setting the priorities for the incoming Commission and also preparing the ground for a very important subject, which is the next multi-annual financial framework. We also pointed out on the external environment, of course, which is likely to have a heavy impact on the presidency itself and the politics of the European Union. And here again, the divergence that we have seen between Hungary and the rest of the European Union on crucial external challenges is also one element that could hamper the creation of an harmonious consensus in the European Union. We can mention the lukewarm support for Ukraine by Hungary, or also the Prime Minister Viktor Orban's public backing of Donald Trump, the further engagement with China or Russia. So all these things can work towards fragmentation instead of creating consensus. Overall, we found that this could indeed be a turbulent 6-month period. However, at the same time, we also look forward to understand to what extent the European Union institution will have a moderating impact on the Hungarian presidency, and perhaps also producing some positive value on integration dynamics. And on this, we focus in particular on 3 aspects that Mariam already mentioned. The first one, the performance-linked funding under the next multi-annual financial framework. Second, the redesign of the cohesion funds, and then the demographic migration challenges. So let me go briefly through our main key recommendations, and then of course we can discuss them further in the debate. So first of all, on budgetary conditionality, this part was written by the Kligendal Institute, in particular Saskia Hollander and Louise van Schaik. So we started by saying that the extension of budgetary conditionality is likely to be part of the next EU's long-term budget. However, looking at the past performance of budgetary conditionality, there is not enough evidence that this cash for reforms model is really effective. And we pointed out to rule of law, for example, as one example of this. We also found that this instrument suffers from some democratic shortcomings, linked, for example, to the lack of transparency and the clarity of procedures. So our main proposition for the future would be, first of all, to identify the European public goods that should be prioritized in this framework, and also to understand what are the necessary conditionalities to deliver these public goods. So first of all, start a conversation on the next multi-annual financial framework based on the desirability of performance-based financing, and also facilitating discussions on the geopolitical priorities that the next multi-annual financial framework should deliver and how to do so. And at the same time, to provide more clarity and transparency of procedures in place in applying budgetary conditionality in order to enhance its democratic aspects. Second topic was the future of cohesion policy by Jaska Pulic from IRMO. Well, on cohesion policy, we underline how this represents a valuable asset for the European Union and also a necessary policy to support the potential of regions and take advantage of opportunities for inclusive and sustainable growth. In terms of our recommendations, we pointed out to the need to ensure adequate financial resources for the cohesion policy objectives, and also try to exploit fully the potential of cohesion policy, in particular in fields such as digital, green, and demographic transition challenges. This should go hand in hand with a simplification of cohesion policy and also a more efficient use of cohesion policy to support efficient integration of future member states into the European Union, at the same time without being harmful to current regions facing economic and social difficulties. Very briefly again on the migration demographic link. So we all know that after many failed attempts, we finally have a new pact on migration and asylum. However, we recognize that this pact is unlikely to make EU migration policy more humane or more effective, or to address the external dimension of migration. This was the core message by the recommendations by Luigi Scazzieri from Center for European Reform. So we advise the next presidency to try to rethink the approach towards external partners in particular, shifting the focus from migration control to forging genuine partnerships. What do we need? What do we mean by that? We recognize that union partners want financial assistance, greater market access to Europe, economic investment, technical know-how, and so on. And for its part, the European Union has a range of objectives that go from cooperation on irregular migration to securing energy supplies and so on and so forth. So the idea is that this should be an opportunity to create a package deal that can blend together each side's interest, and at the same time trying to make migration a phenomenon that can be managed and orderly to be politically accepted by European citizens. Of course, I had to be very quick on the various recommendations, but that was in a nutshell what we have included in our paper. Final consideration, we really think that the role of the presidency, of the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union should be that of an honest broker. It was mentioned also by the State Secretary in his speech. In order to do that, we think that the Hungarian government should dramatically try to change the diplomatic posture that has taken so far, especially on the most controversial issues. And if the Hungarian government manages to do so, we will probably see a successful presidency, and also will put the basis for some incremental changes in the various policy areas that we have mentioned. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Nicoletta, for these main takeaways of the recommendations. Richard, if I may turn to you, how do you see the role of the presidency in the post-election context?
I know we're virtually out of time, so I'll be really, really brief and just draw out 4 more overarching points from all the different policy debates that Nicoletta was talking about. Point number 1, we suggest in our publication that this will be a preparatory presidency, that many of the really important policy files are probably unlikely to make dramatic progress because of the place we are in the institutional cycle, quite separate from the challenges related to the Hungarian presidency. So I think a lot of the important work may be done away from the headlines, the big political news stories of the next 6 months, are likely to take place well beyond the scope of the presidency per se. And so I think the assessment of this presidency will have to be a little bit off the radar screen in terms of whether there's methodical, good quality preparation of key policy dossiers that will be handed on to the next presidency for progress once all the institutional reconfiguration has finalized in the EU. Second point, we argue this will be a test for the institution of the presidency per se, as Nicoletta was talking about. It could go either way. It's not controversial for me to note there's been growing tensions from both sides, and both sides on this would need to be more flexible for this presidency work, from Brussels towards Hungary, from Hungary towards Brussels. It could be indeed that this shows the value of the presidency in obliging governments to think beyond their own rather combative national interests. But it could, of course, go the other way and show some of the fundamental structural flaws of the presidency per se. So it's going to be an interesting stress test for the presidency as such. And I think it will be important for us as analysts to take stock of that at the end of the next 6 months. Third issue, democracy. Of course, many people feel this is a particularly important and fragile moment for European democracy. Of course, everyone is commenting on the elections. Personally, I feel the elections don't represent a big systemic crisis for European democracy. Obviously, there are concerns there because of the change in balance of power. Turnout was more or less the same as in 2019. Disinformation wasn't that much of a spoiler of the elections as many feared it might be. So there has been some resilience. But I think the point I would make is, I think as a result of the elections and combination of the elections and the particular sensitivities of this presidency, the EU's ambition on democracy-related issues is likely to be lower over the next 6 months. There's some quite significant democracy-related initiatives in the pipeline at the moment. I think we're likely to see those probably atrophying a little bit over the next 6 months. There will be more heated debate as a result of the elections over these rights-based issues. And as we know, a lot of the really significant fluidity and political change is going to be taking place at the national level over the next 6 months. Fourth and final reflection, what the State Secretary was saying about geopolitical crises, the geopolitical context, I think is absolutely right. I think the evolution of external challenges is likely to have a more consequential impact than this institutional reconfiguration within the EU. I'm not sure the EU has shown itself ready to respond in a completely united way to many of these crises. And I suspect that tensions and stresses and divergences are probably going to get more challenging over the next 6 months. I was going to go through some of them. I don't have time to do that. So I just mentioned one that strikes to me where we need much more of a kind of preemptive preparation, and that's the US elections. We've all been talking about this for ages and ages and ages now. We know that a kind of game-changing juggernaut may be about to hit the EU. And it seems to me there's not that much preparation of a really coherent strategy for the eventualities of the US elections. And I wonder if this presidency or the fact that we may be in a little bit of a vacuum in terms of political leadership in the EU is actually going to make it harder to come up with a coherent and proactive strategy for dealing what might be about to hit the EU after the US elections. I was going to talk about more things, Mariam. I know we're out of time, so I just leave it there. My four kind of bigger picture reflections of what this presidency might be in more structural and conceptual terms.
I haven't, okay, it works now. Would you like to respond to any of those recommendations, or should we go to the question and answers?
Maybe just a couple of very short remarks. First of all, of course, an institutional shift presidency is an institutional shift presidency. We can ask our Finnish friends about that, who dealt with this 5 years ago. Irrespective of that, there will be a lot on the agenda. So it will be anything but an empty presidency. The strategic agenda just been published yesterday. So we are working on that. And of course, we will be the presidency to put that into practice, or the first presidency to put that into practice. But of course, this is bound to set the the agenda of the next Commission mostly. Of course, we share, I believe, the notions around the geopolitical challenges. I believe these are the same. We differ a bit about the next MFF and on the cohesion issue. But we all know that how MFF negotiations look like. So MFF is something where at the end of the day, every leader has to go home and be able to say that he won the entire package. So this is very important that we strike a good balance there. Cohesion policy is very important for many countries, and as a presidency, of course, we will be dealing with representing the interest of the European Union. Cohesion policy is something which has a lot of benefits, not just in the net receiver countries, but also in the net contributor countries. You can look into statements, for example, by previous German Commissioner Günther Oettinger, who said that maybe the German fiscus is a net contributor, but not the German economy. Same goes for many other countries there. On the other hand, we also have to look into cohesion policies with a balance of centrally managed programs and the uptake of centrally managed programs by those member states who joined 20 or even 20 years ago or even later. And if you look at those numbers, these are anything but encouraging. So cohesion policy certainly has a very important development role. I would refer to I would not comment on the opinion about what and how the Hungarian government has to do. This is a pre-presidency meeting, so we are looking at the issue of as a presidency already now. Maybe just one very short comment on the U.S. elections. I would just like to recall everyone that last time when Donald Trump was elected, there was an extraordinary Foreign Affairs Council called, because the European Union did not like how the Americans voted. So we should respect that the Americans vote for their president, and then the European Union will have to work with whoever the US voted as president. We might not want to do that mistake again, be it whoever will win the election. I would stop here, and of course we are happy to, or I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Maybe I will ask 3 very quick questions, which are very interlinked, and then we open the floor already to the questions from the audience. On external challenges, you were very clear what they are. The EU is experiencing a moment of vulnerability because obviously Russia keeps on attacking Ukraine and scaling up military production. It's also stepping up hybrid attacks on EU infrastructure. You mentioned Israel and Palestine. Israel continues operations in Gaza with massive impact on civilians, causing, big anti-European backlash in Arab countries, but not only in Arab countries. And there is a significant question mark over the US support that, Richard was referring to for Europe's security in the coming years, right? So I'd like to therefore ask what key foreign policy actions should the EU take, in your view, in the coming months? Who will provide Europe's security, to what extent, and in which kind of time frame? And then to follow up on your excellent point about the credibility of the EU in vis-a-vis enlargements in the Western Balkans. Yes, EU needs to be credible, but how about Ukraine and other Eastern Partnership, former Eastern Partnership countries and their credibility or enlargement credibility towards those countries? Thank you.
Very, very shortly. On the defense, the European Union and European Union member states should be ready and capable of defending themselves without the cross-Atlantic partner as well. Now with Sweden and Finland joining the NATO, there are practically, apart from some member state, everyone is part of the NATO. I believe it's 2 member states now who is not. Austria, 4. Who is the 4? Malta, Cyprus, and Ireland. I need know. Very good. So it's still 4. So we are 23. Indeed. All right. Well, thank you. Sorry for that. I didn't know Austria and I didn't know Ireland, of course. So irrespective of who will be the president, as I have said, we need to scale up defense capabilities, and we need to scale up defense capabilities also because we have all these challenges around us, and of course with cooperation, with very high cooperation with the NATO. It's very important. Stoltenberg was here yesterday, by the way. On the other hand, when it comes to other challenges, we should also not forget that who fired what rockets to where when we talk about the Israeli-Palestine issue and what is happening still in Gaza. So let's be clear there. On the other hand, it is very important that we look at all these challenges, and we try to address them in a unified manner. And this is what is needed. And of course, we very much hope, and we've been hoping for a very long time, that we can reach a ceasefire and peace in Ukraine. You know how terrible that war is, and how many actually already died in that war, and how many others will keep on dying if that war rages on. So very important for us, of course, from day one on, not just because of the Hungarian minority being smaller and smaller day by day. It is very important for us. On the former Eastern Partnership countries, we see that there is a high wind now for EU enlargement. We see that there are lots of strategic reforms implemented by all three countries. We see that they are doing very well. We see that especially in the case of Moldova, we see that also in the case of Georgia, we see that also in the case of Ukraine, but we also see that there are still quite some challenges when it comes to neighborly relations, and also when it comes to minority rights, when it comes to the question of Ukraine, which is a very important question. But we know that there are ongoing negotiations in Brussels now, and still during the Belgian presidency there are some room of opportunity to move forward, especially with Ukraine and Moldova. So we will see where we will end up in that process. For the entirety of the enlargement dossiers, we believe that there is some break of the enlargement fatigue in Western Europe, but we certainly would like to see that mirroring also in the case of the Western Balkans, because it's now a very too speedy process, we have to say, and they have been in the pipeline and in the process for very long. As I have said, 21 years ago at least. So we will have to look at what can be done in that regard as well. But certainly, as we are a very fierce supporter of merit-based enlargement process, if there is merit, if there is strategic reforms implemented, then certainly there should be a way forward for the other three countries as well.
Thank you very much. Perhaps Richard or Nicoletta would like to respond to that? No? Okay. Should we open the question and comments perhaps from the audience, because there is huge amount of knowledge and expertise in this room. Thank you. Yes, Ilke. Yes, we hear you very well. But they don't hear you. Perhaps there's a microphone. Or maybe you want to come.
Yeah, they can't hear you otherwise. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
First of all, for your remarks, it's a pleasure for us. This is Ike Teuger. I'm the director of Global Policy Center based in Spain, but also TEPSA board member. And it's really a pleasure for us to come to Hungary and meet you all. I have two questions. One is related to your comments about possible re-election of Donald Trump, because this is one point. This is really making most of the member states very nervous, because he is the first American president that undermined European integration. And it will really be very important that the Europeans get their act together the day after, if he is elected. So I'm really wondering, as the holder of the presidency of the council, what will be the attitude of your government and ministry? This is the first question. And the second question is an interest of mine. What are your plans for the European political community? What are you going to do in your summit? What will be your priorities? Thank you very much.
Can we go one by one? Shall we wait for questions?
Maybe one more question? Yes, yep. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. State Secretary. My question is also for you. Thank you for your very clear presentation of the priorities of the Hungarian presidency. My name is Jaap de Zwaan from the Netherlands, and I'm a former board member of TEPSA. Very happy to be back again in this meeting. I would like to put you a question about the migration issue. Very wisely, you said you are focusing on those areas where we do agree. That's a very wise approach. And you refer to the external dimension, two issues, border control and also cooperation with third countries, let's say partnership. And by the way, I put that question also because it's in the recommendations of TEPSA. You were the one, I think, who wrote so wonderfully this recommendation. I have two questions for you. With regard to border control, we all know it's very defective. And we know also that, of course, the primary responsibility is held by the member states themselves. European Border and Coast Guard, the EU agency, only to assist the member states. Sometimes I'm wondering, also in view of the experience in the Mediterranean, is there a certain merit in changing this role to provide a more primary responsibility for the European Border and Coast Guard, serving the general interest of the whole European Union, instead of leaving this responsibility to individual member states? That's one issue. And when it comes to partnerships with third countries, that sounds, of course, very positive, very elegantly, but what is the role of partnership with regard to migration for those migrants who are on the way to the European Union? Would, in your opinion, these partnerships only serve to stop migrants or to provide them a safe area? And who, in the end, is the responsible authority when it comes to examining their applications for protection? These are sensitive issues, but they are included in a very global reference to partnerships of the European Union. And if Luigi would like to come in as well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm very welcome if you want to comment on that.
Okay, he's happy.
Maybe to just add to Nicoletta's excellent presentation of the recommendations. I mean, essentially, I think what we're doing now could be summarized very often as handing over a lot of money to countries to secure their cooperation, which can also be very expensive. I mean, it can be effective at a high cost sometimes, also in terms of human rights. But so the idea really was, is there a chance to expand the conversation there, to try to craft packages that are a bit broader? I mean, of course, we know that there are issues when it comes to convincing member states to give greater market access, but we do have tools like the Global Gateway, for example, and I don't think they're being deployed very strategically at the moment. We see that the Global Gateway funds a lot of projects in South America, for example, which isn't necessarily one of the priority areas for migration. And then I think to unlock a greater degree of cooperation, we need to talk a bit about legal routes. That is something that can contribute to making migration more accepted by European citizens. And it's also something that can contribute to securing greater cooperation when it comes to returns. And that's where the European Union has a very big problem in terms of getting cooperation on returns. The returns rate is very, very low, and that I think contributes to the salience of migration as a problematic political issue.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. On the re-election of Trump, I did not say that we will do anything in that regard. I said that we have to scale up defense, irrespective of who will be the next president of the United States, because it's not the matter of Trump or not Trump now for the need of defense capabilities enhancement. It might have been a couple of years ago, but it's not now. On the other hand, what the European Union should do, that's what I was trying to refer to. Well, maybe nothing, maybe respect the decision of the United States and then cooperate with the given US president of the US president, be Trump or not. That's I believe what would be wise. Maybe we should not start with the left foot this time as well. But let's wait for the election results first. On the other hand, on the EPC, it's a good question, and I should have said it, that we are planning to have an EPC. The Brits will have an EPC as well on the 18th of July, if I'm not mistaken, but certainly July, which is of course. It is, yes, it is. It is. There will be elections before, but there is the EPC remains in the same. It is according to Greenwich time. It is the first half of the year, July 18th. That gives us a possibility of cooperation of more intense cooperation with the Brits, because our one EPC will be very close to that on the 7th of November. The EPC gives you a very good look at things, because it is practically apart from Russia, Belarus, and Kazakhstan, everyone in Europe. So it is a wider spectrum than just the 27. So we very much look forward to that. We look at that as a soft strategic security format to deal with. And of course, the most important there, it is a relatively new format, started in Prague 2022. And we believe that this is a very good way of allowing also for good bilateral talks, good multilateral talks, and of course set some good agenda points around migration, connectivity, energy connectivity, other issues as well. We are currently working very closely with our British friends, and we will see how we will be able to move forward with the questions they put high on their agenda. They would also like to discuss about migration, but there again we have to be a bit careful, because for them maybe it is the other side of the channel is an easy solution for some of their challenges. On the border control, I would not say that we should hand out border control to the Frontex. I believe that no member state would ever give up border control. Frontex is helping where it helps. Frontex is, for example, not present in Hungary currently. It used to be. On the other hand, we have to scale up border control, because we are, as I have said, jeopardizing the internal market, and the internal market is indeed one of the greatest good of the European Union. And if we have been living behind borders for long enough to remember. So we don't want to start the proper Schengen inside Schengen border controls again, which actually we enjoy most of the time of the year in many of our border crossings. So it is indeed very important. On migration, we have ourselves emphasized for very, very long that we have to be able to decide outside of the European Union who at least has a chance for receiving asylum status, because we have a very big problem with sending people back who are not eligible for asylum within the European Union. We see the numbers. I was not quoting them, but we know that these are tragic numbers. So in that sense, all these extraterritoriality ideas and the new solutions, which, for example, now 15 member states advocate for, these are all issues where we certainly have to map, and we have to look at these as possible ways out, how we can actually reserve the possibilities of those who are eligible for asylum, that we protect them as they should be protected according to international obligations, but how we can actually separate all those who are not eligible for entering the European Union, because there are large numbers among these people who are not eligible to enter the European Union. So it is, in that sense, a key issue to cooperate with the third countries. First reason for cooperating sometimes is just the stability of these countries. It's also very important that when some of these countries of origin and transit are stable, when there is economic stability, for example, when there is good governance, then certainly there is less possibilities for illegal migration to happen. On the other hand, we have seen in the Turkey deal that this did work, and a lot had been done in that regard. We are now looking for the measures and the effectivity of the measures from the other key countries like Tunisia and Egypt, and of course even further if we look at the Mauritania deal, is certainly even newer, and of course we will have to analyze the effects. And but we are convinced that this is a question where we have to look for newer ways. We have to look for options, because we see that when that those who are not eligible will not be able to be sent back, and this might be inhuman, and this might look very problematic. But on the other hand, we are convinced that if we keep on sending these invitations, so to say, then many will go on these very dangerous journeys, especially through the Mediterranean. But we could also report about many issues on our southern border. And we see a lot of illegal activities there now. There are lots of arms use, lots of shootings around or on the border, which did not happen a couple of years ago. So this is instrumentalization of migration is certainly an issue, not just on the Polish-Belarus border, but also here in the Hungarian southern border. So we have to look at these issues, and we have to look at the external dimensions to prevent the situation arising within the European Union, which we can't handle. Because this is the unfortunate outcome of the last nearly 10 years, nearly decade since 2015, that many ways we could not deal with the challenge which mass migration caused within the European Union.
Thank you very much. Would you like to further comment on the migration issue? Yeah.
Of course, you have to assess eligible or not, but who is the authority to make that assessment? Is it the third country involved, or is it one way or the other European Union or a member state of the European Union? Like, for example, has been in the bilateral agreement, Italy and Albania. According to standards, the Albanian authorities are going to assess these applications. But if we are referring to Mauritania, my impression is this bilateral agreement only serves to stop migration and not to deal with that in a proper manner, respecting human rights and so forth.
I'm anything but a great expert of the Italian-Albanian deal, but as far as I know, it will be Italian authorities looking into the applications, and not Albanians. The sole thing which will be provided is the territory within Albania. On the other hand, it is the European Union has to be within the decision. So it is very important that the decision is made according to the international obligation by the European Union, but outside the European Union.
Well, perhaps to come back to the security question that Ilke had and the follow-up to that, you mentioned a couple of times that Europe needs to scale up defense capacities, and I think it's very hard to argue against that. My question would be, how fast can Europe do that? How can we make it faster? We hear quite a lot that the European defense industry needs, long-term contracts in order to actually scale up their production. Do they have this long-term prospect? What would be your comments on that?
Well, of course, we can buy wisely. And Europe can buy wisely, and European member state can buy more from Europe, but it's up to them, of course. There is a room for buying more European equipment if we look into the setup of latest purchases by large European armies. But it's not my duty or Hungary's duty to comment on that. But on the other hand, we certainly have to scale up production. So there is where to buy from whom, and of course you can set up corporations. You can use military and civilian technique together. You can use innovation for both. These are issues which on the long term use or enhance the European Union's competitiveness. So it is very important that whereby, of course, there are issues within weaponries and within armament and within weapons, which certainly are only used within the military industry. There are many things which are used both on civilian side as well. So you can actually scale up efforts in that regard. We are trying to live up to to what is expected from us. Actually, we are spending far more than 2% of our GDP, and also within the 20% rule of new equipment. We are ourselves also for a couple of years now. We are already on the side where we live up to the requirements. Everyone has to live up to the requirements. I believe that practically everyone is scaling up efforts in that regard. Those times when Europe could neglect its own safety and security and defense have long gone. I believe this is the reality. If within that we can also give some more possibilities for our own industries, that's a cherry on top, I believe.
Yes, there is a question in the back, or a remark.
Thank you much. My name is Laszlo from Historian from European House, NGO. I would like to have 3 short questions. So number 1, Hungarian presidency will start very soon. How will Hungarian citizens be informed about the whole presidency? Will you have any very open attitude to general public in Hungary and of course European level to inform people about very hot topics? The second one is, can you estimate how many presidency events will take place, for example, in Hungary? And the third short question is, do you have already any ready-made plan to cooperate with NGOs, civil society actors here in Hungary about those topics which we know they are purely governmental business? I mean, the whole implementation of EU presidency, but still the previous presidency countries have very good example to cooperate with local and civic stakeholders. Thank you.
Well, the information flow will be as it usually is when it comes to presidencies. We will have a presidency X or Twitter account on the maiden name. We will have a web page. We will have host broadcasts from all the ministerial meetings. So this is the usual business. Of course, most of the presidency events are, so to say, invitation-only events, like in every case. We will have 250 meetings altogether, 16 informal councils, two European summits, so to say. One is the informal European summit I mentioned on the 8th of November, one EPC summit, and we are also planning to hold during the end of the year a summit in the Western Balkans with the Western Balkans countries, following our Czech friends example, who had that in Tirana. We have a very wide-ranging consultation together with the European Commission's office here in Budapest, and the last meeting will be indeed tomorrow, where we have ended up putting together our recommendations for those to be invited, and tomorrow we will discuss the external dimension of migration priority together with stakeholders from academia, from civil society, and of course, like I'm here today, we have done a very large round of consultations throughout member states, economic and business stakeholders, Chamber of Commerce's, NGOs. So we did a far higher round of consultations on the presidency priorities than that is usual. We count up to roughly 300 meetings of many kind, as I have mentioned, where we have spoken about our presidencies. So practically these 250 events will take place here in Budapest. When we, of course, will have 1,100 working groups to chair. We will have 36 council meetings and many co-repairs and other meetings. So this is something where certainly we will have a lot to deal with. Thank you.
Great. There is Paul who has a question, and Eric in the back. And then I would ask Nicoletta and Richard to come in with their final comments, if possible.
Thank you very much, State Secretary. Time. So microphone works for taking the time. Thank you. My name is Paul Schmidt from the Austrian Society for European Politics. I would like to ask a particular question. There are some hot legislative topics which are still open. Take, for example, the nature restoration law, where the Belgian presidency might be successful, but if they're not, and as you have mentioned that you will be an honest broker, will you try everything possible to broker a deal on this nature restoration law, to take one example? Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Eric Jones, and I'm director of the HUN-REN Centre at the European University Institute. I have a question that's not about regulation and not about legislation, but rather about own resources and borrowing. We have a problem right now that high interest rate charges on the debt being serviced for the Recovery and Resilience Program are eating up all the headroom in the budget. And we don't have enough own resources to begin amortizing the debt from 2026 onward. Does your presidency have any plan to generate own resources to do that, or to facilitate rolling over the debt by issuing new debt in its place?
Thank you very much. I will start with the nature restoration law. This was postponed from COREPE yesterday, I believe. There is a slight chance that at the MV Council, the Belgians will have agreement on. There are some member states against that regulation who form a blocking minority. But of course, if should the Belgians not succeed, then of course we will try to move forward with during the Hungarian presidency. That's how you have to do that. On the own resources, this is a very good question. And first of all, I would like to say that yes, the RRF is eating up a lot of issues because of the skyrocketing interest rates of the first ever such instrument. And despite that, and I'm speaking here as Hungary, and please disregard that from the presidency perspective, we are anything but happy about the RRF and especially about the fantastic communications from the Commission, how successful that is. But we see that there is thinking towards more and more RRF-like instruments for the next MFF. But of course, that's the future will bring that. First example did already cause us a midterm review of the MFF, which the leaders agreed that they will not do. So this is quite an issue. On the own resources, the own resources, there is a very long-standing discussion about own resources, and we have not yet found any which would actually result in actually money coming in and not just administrative burden rising. So the issue is that as far as we are concerned, we have not seen any of the proposals which would be anyhow better than GNI. But we will of course continue with looking into the question. As far as we are concerned, there is no decision point during the Hungarian presidency. There is no appetite whatsoever for a further revision of the MFF, and it should not be, because we just had that in February. So it certainly will cause further problems. Maybe with the slightly better interest rates, it will not be as big of a problem as it used to be before February. But this is certainly an issue that if we keep on borrowing, then of course there are other threats or risks, to put it mildly, which have to be factored into the evaluation. This was not the case before the Commission started to borrow money from the markets. So this is an issue certainly which the next MFF, the next MFF will have to deal with.
Yeah. Thank you. And now I turn to Nicoletta and Richard for any final comments they might have. Richard is raising hand.
Two issues were mentioned that seem to be particularly important and underexplored to me. One is the RRF. It seems to me that eventually some additional sources of own resources will be needed. Once you have those, you need some kind of political accountability that begins to have implications for the nature of the EU polity, the structure of the EU as a political system, which is a major issue, it seems to me, that hasn't really been debated in any depth at the moment. So that's number one. And number two, I think it's Luigi's point about the global gateway. It seems to me the most underexplored external issue at the moment. Huge amounts of money are now going through the global gateway. Global gateway is becoming the main interface with third countries, through which third countries react with the EU. And at the moment, it seems to me rather ad hoc and a bit scattergun in terms of where projects are going, and there's not a lot of strategic rationale being spelled out in terms of how these projects are being decided. I think now as the Global Gateway moves into a second phase, that's got to be dealt with, because if this is to be a major strategic tool, it's got to be made more precise and tailored to the EU's geostrategic interests. And then all your questions on defense, Mariam, it seems to me defense and security will continue to be a priority. The hard right parties that have gained in these elections are fairly realpolitik and security oriented. I think the debate will be whether this incipient process of Europeanization of defense will continue, or whether some countries or MEPs will try and draw back the main locus of defense policy developments to the national level.
Bert.
Okay, Mariam, very briefly, one main takeaway from this discussion, as we all know, the European Union is forged in crisis, and I think that this exceptional conjuncture that we have at the moment between internal and external challenges would be particularly helpful in proving if this assumption is still true. From an expert point of view, also for TEPSA, I think the next few months will be particularly interesting to understand more the interplay between politics and institutions in the European Union, not only because we have just had a very important vote at the European Union level that can also change in a significant way the configuration of our institutions, the way they work and their priorities. But also we have this presidency in front of us, and the Secretary of State will excuse me if I name the Hungarian presidency among the challenges for the European Union, because I think it would be particularly important to understand the role that the rotating presidency has for the European Union, and maybe lead us to reconsider it, reinforce it, or try to change it for the future. So this is just a reflection from my side. Thanks.
Richard, for joining us. Thank you, Mr. State Secretary, for sharing your views in such an open fashion, for all the very open discussion as well. Many thanks to the authors of the TEPSA recommendations, obviously, and to the coordinators. And well, please join me in applauding this panel.